You're listening to Depth Perception, supported by our patrons on Patreon.
Hi, welcome to Depth Perception. We're talking about TED today, and who TED is, and what TED is, and why sometimes there's an X at the end.
Yes.
So TED Talks is the place to start because, they have definitely I have the most to say about TED Talks, even though I've never watched one.
Oh, you haven't?
Never in full, no. I mean, there's some 3-minute baby clips of them that I've seen, but I've never watched a TED Talk in full. It's the last thing I'm it's like sitting in on a class at college or something where you're not getting credit. It seems like such a waste of time for me to do while I'm on YouTube. So I have my own preconceptions of what a TED Talk is. I think it's like a marketing thing.
Yeah.
I think it's to sell a book or, anything else that you have to sell. Right.
Or just your status as an expert.
Yeah. It's the same thing as how a rapper will go on Conan or something and they don't get paid for that appearance because it's promotion. I don't know if people get paid for TED or not, but it is just a marketing thing, I think. I'm going to just guess some things and then you can tell me whether I was right or wrong when it's your turn. I feel like TED Talks are heavily gate kept. I feel like they're not going to give them to people that don't have something saleable. I don't think the Dalai Lama is going to get a TED Talk. I don't think homeless people are going to get TED Talks. Baristas are not going to get TED Talks. It's I think they're kind of not that cool. I don't think it's a cool thing to have a TED Talk. I think it's way cooler to have a TEDx talk because from what I understand, anybody can do a TEDx talk. Obviously, I'm sure there's an approval process and things like this, and it's gate kept in the way that anything is gate kept that you do on somebody's platform. There is unfortunately, now I'm comparing it in my own mind to the sneeze that you just said I had, but it's a little bit more like punk rock. They tackle I feel like they'd probably tackle actual important things at TEDx talks. I feel like that's just a place for people to go and philosophize, as opposed to, I don't know, Tim Apple. What's his name?
Tim Apple?
The guy Tim Cook.
Yeah, Tim Cook.
Yeah. Yeah, known to the White House as Tim Apple. I feel like it's the same thing as him doing the showcase when they have a new iPhone.
Yeah, it's that vibe. Absolutely.
Yeah, whereas TEDx is at its best, I feel like it's when you have a really kick-ass sub in school. To me, the good ones were the ones that came in and kicked knowledge and had life experience and weren't I don't know, whatever, the person in college that's learning to come and teach. I think that's the space that TEDx occupies in my imagination. Can you tell me why I'm wrong about TED Talks and TEDx?
No, but I'll go back to some things you said and tell you what I think. So first of all, I hope I don't shock you by saying something that turns into some kind of massive disagreement that later turns into actually we were saying the same thing. But
what are the chances
at this point? Well, yeah. What are ever the chances? Yeah. Okay, but here we go. I think that these TED Talks, I like the comparison that you made between TED is the teacher, that comes and teaches you what they're supposed to, whereas TEDx is the wild card substitute teacher. I think that TEDx is the wild card there. It's sometimes you get something that's kind of crap, or you get somebody who's just kind of venting to you about the fact that they don't have recognition. But sometimes you get somebody who's really brilliant, who, who figured out, who knows how to like get themselves onto a stage. You know what I mean? Like maybe they could never get on a TED stage, but they've gotten on the TEDx stage, and they say something amazing. As a matter of fact, as a side note, I do know that there was TEDx talks at my university like a few years ago, and anyone could apply, and they would still, of course, like you said, they would screen and weed people out, but it's much more open than TED.
Because they're also selling something just as much as the person doing the press tour is.
Right.
The thing that kept me from researching this topic in any capacity was the fact that when I Googled TED, it came up as that movie with the teddy bear, and Matt Damon.
Yeah, I would have stopped too.
Yeah.
It's like when you try to Google certain things and you just can't. Like when you're trying to research Star Wars jizz music. It's the same kind of thing. It's like there's a reason why we don't talk about
Hottest jizz in the biz, dude. Okay, so yeah, so TED is like the tenured teacher that is not really hitting right. Not they're prepping you for the standardized test.
The thing about TED is TED comes with the confidence is already there. Like the confidence is already included when you're doing a TED talk. Like the satisfaction of like knowing that what you're saying is being sanctioned by somebody is already there. And it creates a feeling of phoniness. And sometimes this illusion, you can not notice it, right? Because that's the thing about like institutionally sanctioned stuff. Sometimes it's invisible. And then you watch somebody go on TED and do a TED talk about something that you expect to be cool. Because maybe, for example, there's what's her name? I gotta look. I think her name's Hannah Fry. She's on Numberphile a lot. I thought she was really cool. She's a mathematician. She talked about some cool problems on Numberphile. And then she goes on TED, and I go and watch her TED talk because I'm on the TED website trying to find something cool. I don't know what I was looking for. Anyways, find her. I watch her TED talk. It made me hate her. It broke the illusion completely. It sucked. You know what it was about? She was doing statistical analysis of crime rates in London and talking about criminals like as like statistical blips and like talking about allocating police to places where like people were more likely to perpetrate crimes. It was fucked up.
Well, yeah, I mean, the problem with that is always that it's not sending police to where people are more likely to perpetrate crimes. It's sending police where you want to catch people doing crimes that everybody's doing anyway.
Exactly. So the fact that she was like wide-eyedly going on about this and getting claps for it just disgusted me. So like, yeah, that was the first moment that I was like, that I really saw something about TED Talks that I hadn't seen before, I think. And I don't know if I consciously recognized it then, but that's a really good example of like the way that the normally background aspects of TED suddenly become very revealing. You know what I mean?
For me, it's too similar to like getting pulled into the auditorium as a kid, like in school, and you have like the dare people there or something. I mean, it's like whenever you like have a conversation about like you said, something that's institutionally sanctioned, which automatically means it's like heavily gatekept. Like there's like, on the one hand, there's a standard of quality that like, it's never going to be like that disastrous. No, it's never going to be like Yahoo Serious or something that gets up there and like, or whoever the watermelon guy is that smashes watermelons. It's never going to be them like doing bullshit up on stage with props. It's going to be like reasonably academic. I'm sure like I say, I've never watched one, but I assume it's extremely dry. Aside from like the polite laughter that people do when somebody says something that's not funny. But like, what the fuck? What does Bono have to say to a room of people? Bono. I'm never gonna say it right, even though I've never actually talked about Sonny Bono in my life. I don't know what Bono has to say.
They're as good as their speakers. Some of them are good.
Okay.
I will say this. There's certain topics on which I've always wanted more and never gotten it. Like, for example, when I was in school as a university student looking for cool talks on like specific topics in music, the thing about TED is it makes you watch something, and if you don't know better, you might look at this and go, oh, they know what they're talking about. Like, that's cool. I've learned something today. And it's the kind of thing where like, and you see this on TED Talks, and you also see it on math videos on YouTube that like explain simple math concepts. And you also see it on like, I don't know, channels where people talk about psychedelics, where people like go like, "Oh, you just made me feel so smart," or "You just made me feel like I was having like this experience." Like, and I feel like there's a little bit of that vibe with these things where people make something sound sexy and approachable, and they don't necessarily make a complicated thing sound simple, but they try to simplify a complicated thing in a wrong way that ends up being misleading. And then there's no one there to be like, okay, well, this isn't really very rigorous, And TED doesn't have a solution to that problem. It's always going to lend credibility to something, regardless of its quality.
Right. So it's like, I've always gotten the vibe that it is like the uber professional version of, God, I'm stuck on high school today for some reason, but like doing extracurriculars to put something on your resume. Like, it's like, I don't know. It's a weird thing. Like, I don't fully understand how like TED like acquired the level of prestige that I perceive it to have. Even as somebody that is like actively anti, I still perceive it to have a certain level of prestige.
Yeah.
I still like do like polite applause in my head whenever I hear that somebody I've heard of has done a TED Talk.
So are you aware how TED started out?
No, I have no idea. Like I said, I stopped the second I saw the Seth MacFarlane movie.
Yeah. I hope that he hasn't done a TED Talk. But I wouldn't be that surprised.
I bet he did it in Peter Griffin's voice.
Yeah. TED started out as like a Silicon Valley like annually held, what is it, technology, entertainment,
Oh yeah, well,
and design conference. Right. It's that particular brand or flavor of credibility and
Yeah, like tech bros
and support. It's the tech bro like aesthetic. The aesthetic is that. It's like if Elon Musk was like a conference, kind of, but like Elon Musk's boring brother, who's also an abstract concept. Well, I mean, that makes both of them. What about the fact that TEDx talks get put up and then they get taken down? And again, TED doesn't officially ban things, but it does happen. People also will make a big deal out of it when it happens on YouTube.
I mean, how closely affiliated are TED and TEDx?
It'd be great to actually like look it up because I don't exactly understand it, but they're definitely like they got to be funded by like the same sources. I assume what makes TED so big is that it has probably a big endowment at this point.
See, I assumed the thing about TEDx was that like it's like the same thing as tweeting. Like nothing goes into it, nothing comes out of it, but like it's up to you.
The TEDx program. TEDx is a grassroots initiative created in the spirit of TED's overall mission to research and discover, quote, ideas worth spreading, which is also a good thing to keep in mind, keep high in our heads. Ideas worth spreading. TEDx brings the spirit of TED to local communities around the globe through TEDx events. They're held multiple times a year, by the way, rather than the yearly bazaar that is the main TED Talks. These events are organized by passionate individuals who seek to uncover new ideas and to share the latest research in their local areas that spark conversations in their communities. TEDx events include live speakers and recorded TED Talks, and are organized independently under a free license granted by TED. These events are not controlled by TED, but event organizers agree to abide by our format and are offered guidelines for curation, speaker coaching, event organizing, and more. They learn from us and from each other. More than 3,000 events are now held annually. That's interesting. They learn from us and from each other, but we do not learn from them. They chose to leave that out.
Okay, so the example I was going to use doesn't necessarily work. I was going to say that it's like comparing like a billboard in town to like a billboard on a country road. But in reality, it's more like, like a high profile gallery versus like a shitty gallery or something.
Yeah. Right.
So, okay. So they do like care about TEDx to a degree, I guess.
Right.
I mean, it's like, when you let, students like, I don't know, have Pep Fest.
Right. It's like one of the things that justifies TED to itself.
Yeah. I mean, TEDx is the thing that justifies TED to me, like, altogether. Even though I'm never going to watch it. Also, I was thinking how funny it was that we both guaranteed that we'll never get a TED Talk.
Right now?
In the course of this episode, yeah.
Well,
and if we haven't already, like, I'm trying. So, okay. So we've established that, like, TEDx, I don't know, maybe we haven't established this. Maybe only I've established it. For me, like, TEDx justifies, like, the existence of TED. Mm-hmm. Even in as much as I'm not interested in ever watching either one. It still is cool to me that there is, like, a place that encourages, like, people to just go and talk. It's as cringy and, like, shitty and, like, as much as I always will ever make fun of it anytime it comes up. Like, the idea of a marketplace of ideas is good. The reality is that Ben Shapiro just says it really fast, and he turns his voice up to 11, and he says marketplace of ideas, and you can't stand to be publicly owned on the marketplace of ideas.
There's a part of me that has reacted to the idea of markets and said, like, the idea of markets, it's like a faulty metaphor, or like has considered, like, what would it mean to be, like, anti-market in the same way that people have been anti-God, meaning rather than being an atheist, being like an anagorist, being like against like the mythos of the market, the idea that the market is basically a god and needs to be deconstructed. But I don't think I'm there. I've been thinking about it. I don't think I'm there. I think where I am is markets under capitalism. Like, markets are not the problem, but capitalism plus markets is the problem. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, these things are not equivalent, and it's easy to think of them as equivalent today because of the way the world is and the monopoly that capitalists, I don't know, I guess you could use the Mark Fisher term, capitalist realism, sort of like has on our, like, the thoughts that we have about markets. But capitalism and markets are not the same thing.
Yeah. Well, okay, so what I was driving at was that, like, TED very much has, like, the stench of a market to me. Like, it is there for things to be sold to people looking to buy them.
Right.
What I wanted to ask was, is TEDx, is it, like, still a market? Is it like a farmer's market?
Maybe it's like, more of a farmer's market.
Or is it like a swap meet?
I think it's got the aesthetics of a farmer's market, or it's got the ideology of a farmer's market. It's like a farmer's market as conceived and regulated by, like, a corporation. like it's like a Whole Foods. TEDx is like Whole Foods. That's pretty much what I think it is. But I mean, it has the potential to be something better than Whole Foods. It is better than Whole Foods. It's somewhere in between Whole Foods and a farmer's market is what TEDx is to me. Because it does come to your community, but it doesn't start in your community. It'd be like if Whole Foods hosted local vendors. That's what it would be like. Like if there was a system, like a farmer's market corporation around the country that had its own, like, Whole Foods brand, but also, and had like a yearly, like, expo, and also hosted smaller events, smaller, like, expositions around the country in which people could apply to have a booth in those expositions. I feel like that's approaching what TEDx is versus TED.
Okay. Good. Okay. Do people have to pay to do a TEDx?
Great question. I think no.
Okay. Well, I was hoping you had the answer. I'm going to look it up real quick. Because if they do, I fully understand. I fully understand why there's TED at that point. Because at that point, it's like a money-making venture. Unless they have, like, sponsors. Here, this is just like a Quora answer, so take this with a grain of salt because I bet there's a link to porn on this somewhere. TEDx covers travel and accommodations, or TED does.
I looked up how does TED make money, and this seems to be a clue to the question you just asked. The most direct way to approach TED is through a nomination, either by someone else or yourself. When nominating yourself, TED requires a description of your, quote, idea worth spreading that your talk will focus on, and links to videos of your previous speeches or presentations. So you need two things. You need a good pitch and established credibility as a public speaker. And evidence of that credibility.
Does this count?
Does this count? Well, it depends on whether or not we become Twitch affiliates, I think.
Okay. Well, then. Goal set. Okay. So, you think it's about establishing a hierarchy within TED?
I feel like TED has existed longer than TEDx. It might be that, like, as TED became bigger, they lost the ability to, like, do some of the... Somebody involved with TED was like, let's get more of those, like, kind of, out of the blues.
But it's so obviously, like, it's the same organization, though.
I guess it is the same organization. I guess what it has to do with is they wanted to do more TED stuff, and they wanted it to be more community-focused. Something about community values, TEDx allows it to happen a lot, and it allows cities to do their own.
Oh yeah,
TED
maybe
stuff.
X is like multiplied.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's what it is. I don't know. Maybe it's not as bad as I think. Maybe it's not as bad as I thought.
I don't think it's as bad as you thought. I just think that sometimes there's bad topics, and TED being what it is legitimizes bad topics.
Well, because to me, it just feels like a sales pitch. Like, I mean, it's like a mentalist routine or something. That is, it's like a total crackpot gets up on stage and sells you a book, or obviously, like, they're not having to well, I don't know. Maybe do they sell tickets?
Yes.
To attend it.
So I looked it up.
So they have to justify like the cost of the tickets to people.
Yes.
What are they like? Are they $15 or are they like $200?
Great question. How does TED make money? TED makes money through conference attendance, fees, sponsorships, foundation support, licensing fees, and book sales, and we spend it as soon as we get it on video editing, web development, and hosting for TED Talks and TED Ed videos. Ideas are free, but bandwidth is expensive. Support for community-driven initiatives like TEDx and the TED Fellows, and of course, paying fair salaries to staffers and interns. Everyone who buys a pass to attend a TED conference is helping share free TED Talks video with the world, as well as supporting the TEDx program, free TED fellowships, TED Ed video lessons, and more great stuff that is shared with the world for free. I didn't mention TED Ed. TED Ed makes pretty good little videos with nice animations.
So really, like, what it is they're like marketing philanthropy, I guess.
Yeah, it's like a liberal information utopia kind of vision.
Which is like very square with what the Silicon Valley scene is about.
Right. It's like that utopian libertarian leftist dream grown up into your boring dad.
How much room do you think there is for like other ventures for TED?
I envision a future of ever splintering TED Talks, fractally smaller and smaller and more frequent as they go through the alphabet. TED Y, TED Z, TED what comes after Z.
TED seems like, maybe I'm wrong about this. Maybe like the immune systems of all people will be perfect in 2022. But TEDx seems like something to me that is like poised to be fully online. I think it like, as much as I hate it, and like I do hate it because it like just it just feels like two things which I hate more than anything, which is marketing and academia. And but I know that more people probably like those things than don't like them.
At least within the TED audience.
So
certainly.
So like to me, like the place that I see TED like being, in the future is like, you know, it probably. I don't know whether like I should envision like a world without crowds and audiences and things, but like a streaming platform. You know, I pay a subscription for PBS. Or maybe I don't. Maybe PBS is free. But I definitely pay for like Curiosity Stream, which is like documentary streaming. So like that is like where TEDx is like.
Yeah, I think if Curiosity Stream didn't exist, Ted would have created it. I mean, they're very
but it's
similar.
like it's not the same thing though.
But what I mean is like that. There's an element of them that is similar. That it does a different thing, but there's an element of Curiosity Stream where it's like it's a little bit more legit than YouTube. Like you have to prove yourself as having a following. It's somewhere certainly in between TEDx and TED.
I mean, I think it's like
Curiosity
literally just documentaries, unless there's like stuff that I'm missing.
I just know that a lot of people on YouTube have like started on YouTube and like been offered Curiosity Stream channels where they like do collaborative documentaries with other YouTube people. That's all.
Oh yeah, okay.
It's a different talent
but
pool.
like, it's one of like, I could watch the anime that I like. I could watch it on Netflix, or I could watch it on Funimation or Crunchyroll, or like, you know, one of the anime services. Like, I could watch documentaries on Netflix, but the documentaries on Netflix also feel like they're trying to sell me a product instead of like trying to tell me about a situation. You know?
Yeah.
Like when I tune into a documentary on Curiosity Stream, and you know, they're not good. They're not like good, well-made documentaries. I've never seen one that was like good. It's like middle of the day History Channel quality for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But that is like my flavor of documentary, and I think if TED had like a really well curated library, and maybe they do, and I just don't know it because I will never look. But if they had like a good, well curated library with like, you know, it's well organized. It's got like tags and
it's got tags. It's not as well organized as I want it to be. There's not enough. There's not like the feeling, the flavor of active, careful, thoughtful curation. It's just like sometimes if you search the tags right, you can find what you're looking for.
And even Curiosity Stream, like when I tune into that, or there's another one, it's called like Nebula or some garbage. It sucks. It's even worse than Curiosity Stream. Like Curiosity Stream even is not as granular as I would like it to be, but it's better than Netflix because on Netflix the entire section is just documentaries.
Yeah, Netflix sucks with that. Yep.
Yeah.
Real bad.
And like, you know, like I think like that's a good place for TED to be. Like I would probably get it if it was like $2 and on my TV. Like I would probably subscribe, and I would probably be a perfect subscriber because I would never look at it and never need like to call their support center. Which is what all subscription services want, is for you to never touch them.
Randy, that subscription fee pays the support center's salary.
Yeah, well, fuck those guys.
Just kidding. Can you imagine if every like cheap subscription service, everyone started calling the support center every day? If like our rebellion against
they wouldn't be
like,
cheap anymore.
TV and streaming services was to just to overwhelm all of them at once by getting doing flash phone banking to just like mob all of the private services that we wish were public.
That's why I'll never ever be able to call myself an activist, because as easy as that sounds, there's nothing I would rather do less than.
Yeah, it's even hard for me to make.
For-
It's even hard for me to call
Call a
politicians. It's
support
something that
service.
I can do now, but used to not be able to get myself to do. I can
Why
leave
would
a
you even
message.
bother?
I can read a
They're, like,
script and leave a message. That's what I do for my
so
job,
vapid.
anyways.
Send him an email. Anyway, that's not what this is about. So, I don't know. Are you like a TED viewer?
Not lately, but I
Do you
have
like pay
been.
attention to TED?
When there's topics that I want to find and TED Talks start coming across my, my recommendeds or I see them in a search, what I'll do is I'll go over to the TED website if I watch one that I like, and I'll search the tags. And I haven't had to do that in a while. I had to, but I haven't done it in a while.
So do they?
I just haven't. School
Do they
made
do
me
the kind
it.
of thing where you can, like, I don't know, like, why is there a place that, like, like, as much as I hated college, like, I liked learning, I liked certain lectures.
Yeah.
Is there space for TED to be like, if you really want to hear, like, a good lecture about, like, I don't know, the Ptolemaic dynasty or something, or I could say about, like, which boats were used in piracy or whatever.
Well,
like is there
no, there's not.
space for that?
And the reason is because
No, is there space for that
no,
in TED?
No, there's not, because of their their criteria. I'm not saying that there couldn't be TED Talks about that. That would be good. I'm just saying that if the way that you get a TED Talk is by pitching yourself, marketing your idea, remember, it's an idea worth spreading. Literally an idea that would do well in the marketplace of ideas. If your criterion is, I have to convince people that think in terms of marketing that my idea is worth spreading, you better have some kind of quirky angle. I've seen talks by archaeologists, and I've seen, like, the talks by historians that do cool things, but there's always, like, an element of, like, this is a new thing that I'm doing to approach this, or this is part of my kind of brand as maybe a pop writer on the subject, and maybe I'm publishing a book about it, or, you know what I mean? Like, it's never just, like, this is cool for the sake of the fact that it's research and I thought really hard about this and I want to share it because of my love of, like, my philosophical, like, attitude. Like, I love what I'm studying and I want to bring it out to other people. That's not really enough for TED. Maybe you can go ahead and do that TED Talk once you're up on stage, but usually there is a feeling of, like, this is why you should be excited about this. This is why you should go talk to someone else about it. Because that's what TED wants. I mean, if it's an idea worth spreading, it's also, I mean, I think it's part of why TED's successful. Like, it works. It works that, like, I mean, it's never just like, this is their content. It's also the medium, it's also the fact that they've from the beginning been putting their stuff online. You know what I mean? I think TEDx kind of does the same thing 90% of the time. Every once in a while, the difference isn't really in, like, can we just talk about something without, like, dressing it up? The difference is just that people are, like, more likely to dress up outlandish and less marketable ideas in a TEDx talk. And the examples that I would cite off the top of my head are Rupert Sheldrake talking about morphic resonance, Graham Hancock talking about ayahuasca, in which he repeatedly calls it Lady Ayahuasca, and it sucks. It sucks.
Graham Hamhock.
The Grand Hamhock.
So what I'm envisioning, and I don't know whether you disagree with me, and I just, like, expressed my thoughts well in the first place or not. But, like, what I'm envisioning is, like, I don't know, like, a professor in their off time, like goes to a studio, like, I feel like it's the way that, like, it could be like the way that the Bill Nye show worked, whatever that show was, where, like, a professor, like, runs a series for a while and, like, puts their lectures out for TED, and they do, like, a whole course, and, like, at that point, like, I feel like you're advertising, like, for a university, and there's, like, money in that. Is that like kind of TED's purview, or is that something else? I feel the need to like reinforce that I'm like coming to this as a full-on outsider to TED.
Yeah. Kind of say that last part again. Is it TED's purview or not? Is what TED's purview?
I mean, well, like, because I'm still like on like, if there was like a TED channel or something, like, can you see it being within TED's purview to like give a university professor a, whatever, I don't know, people use a smart board,
okay,
and like have them do a lecture series and put it on TED, and then they're advertising, the class or the university or
probably there's already that
or
feeling of like the kind of university class that really does lean into the marketing. You know what TED reminds me of? Just to give you an example of what I mean, there was a program at SU, a music school program. It originally was in the music school. It ended up being in the communications school. But basically it was a music and business program where they would bring in people who were like really successful in the music industry. The program was called the Bandier program. These kids had like this weird hierarchical relationship with the rest of the like music recording students where they were learning all the music studio stuff, and like the other students who were just part of the music school in a separate program were also in the studio with them, but like they weren't getting the same level. For example, the reason that I didn't find this out until a few years in, but the reason that the music kids hated the Bandier kids at first was because when they set up the Bandier program, they literally had like a class where the music kids that were doing like studio recording, learning how to like make recordings, were like being supervised by the Bandier kids. Like it was like that, like the Stanford prison experiment, you know what I mean? Like, but like fully institutionally integrated, like where you had the people who were like the real life recording studio engineers, and the other people who were like both learning everything that they had learned, but also at the same time learning all of the marketing stuff and acting as like record producers, or like not even producers, but like executives. So people hated that. And the other thing that they got to do, other than learning the marketing and the hands-on stuff, is they had to attend these lectures, this lecture series called the Sawyer's Lecture Series. And every week, I think, and anyone could go that was a university student or whatever, but the Bandier kids had to go. And they brought in people who like had succeeded in some way in the music industry. And that always, I only went to one or two of them ever, but that always had the vibe to me of like TED Talks. It was almost like these kids were like in the like TED lecture series kind of class that you were talking about TED doing online, but as if it was like their actual schooling experience. Like that merging of academia and marketing was very, very like robust in certain departments at Syracuse University. And it's no surprise that that Bandier program ended up being absorbed by the Newhouse School, because the Newhouse School already, like, it started out as a communications school, but like it increasingly became like a digital marketing kind of, that's a little bit wrong, but it's not that wrong kind of place. I think TED represents kind of that trend of just like adding marketing to things and being like, now it's better. And it's better because we can measure it with the tools of marketing and show that it's better. It's like kind of circular.
See, that's
money.
like fully the thing that keeps me away from it is, I mean, I say I'm like not a person that watches TED. Obviously, like, I have seen TED. I've seen, like I said earlier, I've seen like the small clips, the short, like, teasers or whatever that they put out. And I do totally feel like I'm being marketed to the whole time. And sometimes it's just like, it feels like, I'm being sold TED. Even if I'm not like, even if the person that's like on stage doing the thing is not trying to sell something.
Right. Might I like say actually that as a blanket statement, like, you're always being sold TED, and sometimes if a good TED Talk might make you forget, a bad TED Talk might make it painful.
Yeah.
Painfully obvious.
Yeah. And so, I don't know. For me, like, for me, that's what TED has to do to like get money out of my pocket. They don't need it, for sure. And I bet there's like a tiny market for people like me that like, you know, are interested in like hearing lectures
Yeah.
from academics outside of, you know, the halls of academia.
Let me ask you a question.
Not that my community college was at all the halls of academia. That was like the halls of like tube socks.
I don't even know what that like. I only know what that means on an intuitive level.
Yeah, it's something. It's just a feeling.
I want to ask you a question because I was thinking
Ask me
about
a
this
question.
earlier. I saw like something about there was a Google Doodle today for an activist.
Oh, that's crazy. I haven't
Like an
Googled
indigenous
anything today, I don't think.
people's rights activist, civil rights activist, and I was thinking about people who will never have Google Doodles, and it occurred to me that like there's probably very very few people who have Google Doodles who have the word socialism or socialist in their Wikipedia pages, right? With the exception of like certain historical figures from times when those terms weren't defined well, things like that. But overall, like I Googled Karl Marx Google Doodle just to see. Of course, I knew there wasn't one. There was a little blurb on some kind of Google website. It was like something Google public figures thing about Karl Marx. But it's just like, it just makes, so the question is this. There's certain Google Doodles that just won't happen. What TED Talks can never happen? If TED is a platform aimed at marketing things, like what are the limits of TED? What are Ted's spots that just don't get any sunlight? What's TED never gonna shine a light on?
Well, I think it's anything like too meta, right? It's anything that directly like contradicts the mission.
Yeah.
So anything like remotely critical of TED, even without saying the name.
Yeah.
You know, any like, I mean, not that anybody anti-marketing would do a TED Talk,
Right.
but
right.
if they did,
I think Yanis
they wouldn't.
Varoufakis did one, and he's a Marxist, but like even him, he's not like.
Well, I've never heard of him.
He's like a Greek.
Well, obviously.
Critic of the European Union or something. I don't know.
Okay, so there's that. I don't think there's ever going to be like, unless there has. I mean, Bono did one, so all bets are off. Really, I literally cannot imagine what that man has to say about anything.
Yeah.
If there's even a mind behind those sunglasses. But, you know, I can't imagine like, you know, Ninja gets a TED Talk or, you know, somebody like that. Maybe I'm wrong. Well, okay, maybe I'm wrong about everything because I'm never gonna watch TED Talk, and I'm fully spitballing. But like Slavoj Žižek is not gonna get a TED Talk, I don't think.
It's funny you mentioned him specifically because he's actually
Did he like do one tomorrow?
No, but he's talked to this guy
Okay.
that I was just mentioning, Yanis Varoufakis. I think, or I've at least heard him talk about Yanis Varoufakis. I don't listen to Slavoj Žižek stuff anymore, but I used to at a time in my life, and not too long
The last
ago.
thing I heard from Slavoj Žižek was that he prefers caffeine-free Diet Coke to regular Diet Coke, which he's right about.
I'm surprised because he usually has that stupid line about. Everything, you know, like all the things that the symbols of our enjoyment being like removed of like their. I mean, it's not stupid. It's just stupid when he says like when he implies that like decaffeinated things are like in some way like I don't know, inherently phony or like a lie that you tell yourself. Whatever.
Well, leftists have bad opinions about soft drinks. It's a fact.
That's true.
Hassan drinks Diet Mountain Dew.
The idea that Diet Coke tastes better than Coke though is wrong, and I disagree.
No, you're right.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
caffeine-free diet is better than regular diet.
Oh, caffeine-free diet. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Like if you're gonna maybe like
There's
they
like that
negate each
extra-
other. I feel like that's probably the point he was.
Well, there's
making.
just like an extra little bit of poison that's out
Yeah.
of Diet Coke at that point.
I just sent you a comic that I made about TEDx talks earlier this year. I think,
Well,
like in
I don't know where you sent it to.
Discord.
Oh, okay. So yeah, no, I think that there are. I mean, obviously, I think like if TED was like, again, I'm not saying that they're not because I don't know, but like if TED was like a brave like organization, like I don't think there's anything that couldn't come up except for like, well, I mean, I don't think there will be one about like actually the wall is a good idea. Again, the wall is not a good idea, and I don't think that, but like, and me calling it politically incorrect is not me slamming it, but they're not going to touch politically incorrect stuff. Like, unless they do. Again, it's totally spitballing. I don't know. I'm not trying to like shit on it or anything.
Yanis Varoufakis' TED Talks title is "Capitalism Will Eat Democracy Unless We Speak Up," which, as a title, is fairly provocative. It still leaves room for the, like, unless we speak up could mean two things, right? It could mean unless we stop capitalism or unless we, like...
Save capitalism.
Unless we save capitalism.
Unless we just give it a gentle nudge.
And I would argue that that plausible deniability is necessary for that title to even fly, for you to be able to mention capitalism.
For sure.
So he figured out a way to market a critique
there's not
of
going to
capitalism.
be one. There's not going to be the one that's called like how to create a like like a socialist utopia.
Yeah, and he is a pragmatic Marxist who does basically want to, like, in the short term, his goals are the same as those of reformist liberals, which is he wants to limit capitalism so that it doesn't collapse and destroy itself. And somehow he's friends with Slavoj Žižek. I don't remember how, but he is. I'm remembering now.
I mean, we're friends and we're on completely opposite sides of the caffeine-free Diet Coke debate. What is the marketplace of ideas is like a great phrase that is like meaningless on one hand because like it goes without saying that it exists, and it's meaningless on the other hand because like it totally doesn't exist. There's like I fully believe that people believe what they believe, and like you don't actually change anybody's mind even if like you convince them of something.
Well, just on its face, the idea that, like, ideas will just flow around and whiz through the air as, like, entities, but they're also, like, not entities. Like, they're, like, goods. Really, they're not really entities. They're goods, right? Ideas will just whiz about as, like, goods changing hands, and the best goods will be reproduced by other people and, like, modified and iterated on just because they're good. Like, there's more than one reason that people consume a commodity. Like, if that were true, even in the world of commodities, like, no one would eat fucking sweets. People talk about, like, the marketplace of ideas as if it's going to save us from, like, evils. Like, because the good ideas are just going to propagate, and the racist and bad ideas will go away. Like, no. Like, that's the thing about it that gives me a problem and gives me pause. Like, just on the surface level, the metaphor immediately falls apart if you think about it for 1 second.
Yeah, it's not like a clever thing.
But I do think Peter Coffin was right about one thing, and I mean that literally. One, and not more than one thing. Attention is currency in the marketplace of ideas.
Yeah, that's like a snappy phrase and everything. But it's just another thing that like totally 100% goes without saying. Like,
well, right. I mean, it does go without saying.
Like, somebody can't say like this. Somebody can't tell me that the sky is blue, and I'm like, you're right. I'm never gonna say that. You know, The thing about the marketplace of ideas, it's just a phrase that people use when they're wrong, and they know it.
Yeah,
like,
that's how it was coined. It was coined by like a weepy judge who was writing a dissenting opinion or something like that, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't. Who are you talking to, Leo? I didn't read that far into.
What was the guy's name? It was like Timothy Churchmouse Houndstooth or something. I can't remember.
Churchmouse. I think it was like. I don't know. I almost said Orville Redenbacher, but I think
it was like Orville. Yeah.
Oliver Wendell Holmes. Yeah, dox him, guys. I know we have one viewer. Dox him. Yeah, so okay, so again, this is the episode where I get to be like a total ignoramus about everything, but I have no idea whether he was like, the dissenting opinion or whatever. But I think marketplace of ideas is a term that's used by people that are clinically wrong.
Clinically wrong. Yes.
Yeah, like terminally wrong about things. Like it's a phrase that I associate with people like Dave Rubin and
Yep.
Ben Shapiro
Yeah.
and
It's like libertarianism, which is like the dark.
it's fully libertarian.
like the dark, like
which is its
cancerous-
biggest issue.
cancerous growth on liberalism that pretends to be liberalism's pretends to be its opposite. The thing about libertarianism is it pretends to be its opposite. It literally takes a word that means not what it is, what right libertarians believe, and then like phrases things in a way that on a very, very surface level it sounds like what libertarianism actually is, which is like a philosophy that aims to deconstruct hierarchies. And when somebody like Dave Rubin is sitting there, I just said that because I imagined him sitting on his dumb show, but is sitting in front of a camera and talking about the marketplace of ideas in an attempt to give himself this sort of kind of like philosopher's credibility or whatever, like thinking man aesthetic that he wants to think that he has or whatever in order to justify the money he's getting from like.
Dude, everybody fucking hates that guy. There's some
hates that guy.
hilarious compilations about how nobody respects Dave Rubin.
Have you seen the clip of Larry King? Did you show that to me? Larry
Yes.
King taking the call about his like son's baseball game.
I don't know if I showed that to you, but I saw
Classic.
it. Yeah. Larry King is that guy's hero too, which is what's so funny about it. Yeah, so okay, so it is a phrase used by the chronically incorrect. I don't even know if Ben Shapiro says it ever, but it is completely a phrase that I associate with people exactly like him that like, they talk fast and they have ever opened a thesaurus. I've never connected the dots of it being like a total libertarian dummy thing. Like smooth brain libertarian, but it totally is. It is like the thesis of libertarianism alongside like hating age of consent laws. Yeah, so that's like what the marketplace of ideas is. We're going to dive into that later. I don't know what else is there to say. We should end on Ted. Ted, like, to me, like, the problem I have with Ted is purely from like a perception standpoint. Like, I've said it the whole time that I talked to this episode. Like, I simply perceive it to be something that I'm not interested in. But it also has like, knowing the little bit about it that I do, and being a galaxy brain myself, and an intellectual, a coastal intellectual.
Galaxy brain, coastal, elemental, intellectual.
Yeah. I have like, the checklist in my head that it like could be, and I would be fully on board for it, like regardless of if they were selling something or not. I just think they have like too much of like, like boutique coffee shop written all over them for me to, like $15 drip.
It's like a chain boutique coffee shop.
Dude, it's 2 Starbucks for me, dude.
Yeah, it's like a 2-story Starbucks.
And like, the thing about Starbucks is like, I will totally get a toffee cookie when I go to Starbucks. I will totally get a vanilla bean frappe. But that's 2 things on the whole menu. Like, that's the thing that I have about TEDx, is you either need a giant menu that I can like pick through at my own convenience, like if Starbucks was a buffet, or like just keep doing what you're doing. You don't need my money. Like, I don't have any problems with TED. I just don't like it.
Right.
And like, I'm not like the kind of person that's mad at things I don't like all the time.
If TED had been started out as and stayed a small thing, I mean, it's its size and its context which makes it what it is, which is a byproduct of like the existence of large corporations, large academic institutions that occasionally create and support celebrity academics. I mean, that's who like
I think
ends up benefiting from TED the most, right? Not exclusively.
I think most of my expectations for TED come from like it's their own fault for being like associated with academia, that I expect them to be like a little just better.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't hate TED. I just think that a lot of TED Talks are bad. And when I say bad, I mean tiresome, hollow.
Bad is not a bad word.
They're very like, let's think positive kind of thing. It's like, I'll tell you what it is. What soured me on TED wasn't most of the things we've talked about tonight, really. But, I mean, most of the things we've talked about tonight are like feelings that I have informed by my changing opinion of TED. But what did it is seeing TED come up on the right side of my screen when I'm on YouTube and not clicking, because 9 times out of 10, the recommended TED videos that I was getting were just like motivational speeches. It was like self-help. And I'm not interested in the idea that the most marketable ideas are self-help. And I think TED has a real tendency towards like pop psychology, self-help. But it's also very much an idea worth spreading. I mean, I think that's the dark side of the meaning of the idea worth spreading. It's like what the framework of ideas worth spreading is supposed to be is like a wholly positive. Again, it's like the marketplace of ideas, like encapsulated. It's okay. If this idea is good, it will spread. But what are self-help books? They're not health food. They're like the shit that everyone taught was health food that's actually like bad for you. And I think the problem is TED can't acknowledge by its constitution that like the Nature Valley bars or whatever that it actually is selling are like not always going to be good for you. And it's not that it only sells the Nature Valley bars. It's just that that's what that's what the algorithm likes by its own criteria for what is worth platforming, right? But I mean, they wouldn't be as big if they weren't, abiding by the same market ideology, like capitalist market ideology that they are.
Thank you for listening to Depth Perception. You can support us by subscribing to our YouTube channel, kicking us a little bit of scratch on Patreon. Join us live at twitch.tv/depthperceptionpodcast, Wednesdays at 7:30 Eastern.